Good evening. Thanks for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shereen Bhan. Straight to the market action. The bulls gaining for the second day in a row, with the Nifty and the Sensex gaining 0.5% each, with the former reclaiming 10,800 in today. The Sensex also shot up by 140 points, closing just a tad below 35,900. The Nifty Bank rose in line with the benchmark indices, but it was the mid-caps that moved higher in trade today, with that index rallying about 1%. So second straight day for the markets moving higher today. But the big political story: exactly a week after the Pulwama terror attack, the gloves are off between the Congress and the BJP. Congress Party's communications in charge, Randeep Singh Surjewala, has claimed that Prime Minister Modi was shooting for a documentary at the Jim Corbett National Park when the attack took place. This has not been denied by the government. He went on to claim that the Prime Minister continued shooting even after the suicide bomb, which killed 40 CRPF Jawans. The BJP hitting back at the Congress Party, with President Amit Shah accusing the Congress of politicizing terror. Law Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad, holding a press conference later this afternoon, said that the Congress Party and Imran Khan are speaking the same language.
पूरा देश उस सदमे से जूझ रहा था और देश के प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी रामनगर नैनीताल के अंदर कॉर्बेट नेशनल पार्क में फिल्म की शूटिंग कर रहे थे। सैकड़ों किलोग्राम आरडीएक्स, M4 कार्बाइन्स और रॉकेट लॉन्चर देश में आए कहां से? मोदी सरकार ने पुलवामा हमले से 48 घंटे पहले उग्रवादी संगठन जैशे मोहम्मद के धमकी भरे वीडियो को नजरअंदाज कैसे कर दिया? 8 फरवरी 2019 की जम्मू कश्मीर की पुलिस के इस पत्र को, जिसकी प्रतिलिपि मैं आपको दे रहा हूं, इसे नजरअंदाज क्यों किया?
जो राहुल गांधी सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक का सबूत मांगते हैं, लेकिन लंदन में एक क्वेश्चनेबल कैरेक्टर का आदमी हिंदुस्तान के इलेक्शन पर सवाल उठाता है कपिल सिब्बल की उपस्थिति में, तो कोई सबूत नहीं मांगते हैं। उनसे क्या अपेक्षा की जाए?
Well, the war of words there between the Congress and the BJP. Meanwhile, India has said that it's stepping up its efforts to reduce the amount of unutilized water from its share of the 3 rivers that flow into Pakistan. Water Resources Minister Nitin Gadkari took to Twitter saying, and I quote, "Under the leadership of the Honourable Prime Minister, our government has decided to stop our share of water which used to flow to Pakistan. We will divert water from the eastern rivers and supply it to our people in Jammu and Kashmir and Punjab." He went on to say, and I quote again, "The construction of the dam has started at Shahpur Kandi on Ravi River. Moreover, this project will store our share of water for use in J&K, and the balance water will flow from the Ravi Bias link to provide water to other basin states. All the above declared projects are national projects." End of quote. The tweet did cause a bit of a stir initially, with many seeing it as an action by India in wake of the Pulwama attacks. However, the government quickly clarified that the minister was not referring to any new decision, only reiterating the effect of river projects that were green flagged by this government. Neeta Prasad, an official in the Water Resources Ministry, said, and I quote, "This is not a new decision. He's simply reiterating what he has always said." We're now joined for a quick reaction by former Foreign Secretary Kapil Sibal and former Indian Ambassador to Pakistan, Sharad Sabharwal. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the show. Mr. Sibal, let me start by asking you, as we pointed out, that tweet from the Water Resources Minister, Mr. Gadkari, did create a bit of a stir, but then there has been a clarification that this is India's stated position, and of course, we already know about these dams that are currently in the process of being developed. But do you believe that water now is going to once again become one of those points, pressure points for attack between both India and Pakistan? Prime Minister Modi, after the Uri attack, had stated that water and blood cannot flow together. Do you believe that this is now what we are going to see more of?
Well, actually, as has been rightly pointed out, these are projects which are already on the anvil, and they fall perfectly within the rights that have been allocated to us under the Indus Waters Treaty. We've been slow in terms of implementing these projects and letting water flow into Pakistan. Under the treaty, we are allowed to actually divert the entire water of the 3 rivers allocated to us for our use. So therefore, to that extent, this is nothing new. But I hope this will be followed by further steps, which would actually mean that we are beginning to press Pakistan on the water issue in a more serious manner. And that would be if we suspend the Indus Waters Treaty and link it the lifting of suspension to Pakistan's conduct on terrorism, and we can define what Pakistan should do verifiably on the terrorism front, and there are several steps that they must take. The advantage of that would be that we can then continue to build projects on the three rivers allocated to Pakistan within the ambit of the treaty, but not subject them to Pakistan's continuous disruptive tactics where they impede every single project, push for arbitration, push for appointing a neutral observer, delay the projects, get the designs changed, and harass us constantly. And that is where I think the real action should be. But what has been done is all right, but then this is not questioning the Indus Waters Treaty at all, which continues to be honored by us.
Absolutely. And as you rightly pointed out, there have been several instances where Pakistan has accused India of violating the Indus Waters Treaty with respect to several of these projects and taken the matter to arbitration as well. But Mr. Sabharwal, would you agree with Mr. Sibal that perhaps time has come to actually look at the possibility of a suspension of the Indus Waters Treaty? And is, there previously as well in 2016, there was the question of whether there could be an abrogation of the treaty itself. But do you believe that that is the direction that we could be headed, and can unilateral action under the treaty be taken?
Well, the treaty provides, Article 12 provides that it can be abrogated, it can be repealed only with an agreement between the two countries. In other words, they have to sign another treaty for that purpose to be able to terminate the treaty. In that sense, it's the treaty in perpetuity. There is no sunset clause there. So the treaty doesn't provide for it. It will be a unilateral abrogation, which will be against the terms of the treaty. Now, as Mr. Sibal pointed out, they have been creating problems for us for our hydroelectric projects. Under the treaty, each hydroelectric project which you undertake, 6 months before the commencement of rivers work, you have to inform Pakistan of what you are going to do, and they can raise objections to which you have to reply. Earlier, they used to drag it on for a long time. Now, for some time, we have taken the position that, look, we are required to inform you, and if you have any objections, we can answer you. But it is not a veto that you have. You know, it's not that you can indefinitely delay. So we have started work on some projects. So it's not impeding our work on projects, although they keep on creating problems from time to time. The issue, of course, the practical issue would be if we wish to stop the flow of those rivers. As Mr. Sibal rightly pointed out, the minister spoke of the eastern rivers, which is Ravi, Satluj and Bias, which have been allotted entirely to us. And over the years, we have allowed significant share of water of those rivers to flow to Pakistan. And now he seems to suggest that we'll harness it for our own use. This is something which we should have done it much earlier. But if Pulwama has impelled us to do it or spurred us into doing it, so be it. It's a welcome move.
No, Pulwama... Right, but Pulwama hasn't, because this is a decision taken by the cabinet prior to Pulwama, and this has been the stated objective as the government itself has clarified.
Yeah, but this
absolutely.
Is very
there is no link to what the minister has stated today and Pulwama. Yeah. Yes, that is correct. But Mr. Sibal, I want to go back to you. What was the other proposal, sir? What other proposal are you talking about?
This is very different from the other proposal which Mr. Sibal mentioned, which is made from time to time in our strategic community to stop the flow of water of the western rivers, Indus, Jhelum and Chenab, which have been allotted to Pakistan with very limited usage to us. So this distinction needs to be made.
Yes, that distinction needs to be made. Mr. Sibal, I want you to respond to what we just heard there from Mr. Sabharwal in light of your comments on suspension of the Indus Waters Treaty and whether India can do that unilaterally.
Of course we can do that. You know, the United States walked out of the ABM Treaty, walked out of, now has walked out of the INF Treaty, they've walked out of the Climate Change Accord, they've walked out of the Iran nuclear deal. China has totally rebuffed the jurisdiction of the tribunal set up under the law of the sea to which they are a signatory. So countries take these decisions unilaterally. So why can't India do it? And what I'm saying is that we should suspend the treaty and make its resumption, our adherence to it, conditional upon Pakistan taking serious steps to curb terrorism. Now, this is a non-violent option we have. Just as we have not found an adequate answer to Pakistan's use of terrorism against us, take it from me, they'll have no answer to this strategy if we follow. But what can they say? But what we are saying is you can't continue the flow of terrorism towards India and yet say that the waters must flow. Now, I'm not even suggesting that we should stop the flow of water, because that would mean building dams and this will take years. What I'm saying is that we should stop them from harassing us on the projects that we have the right to build on the rivers allotted to us. You know, they made us change. They created such difficulty on the Baglihar project, on Kishan-Ganga. They made us change the design and everything else. The Tulbul project, for example, had not taken off the ground. We should immediately start working on the Tulbul project. So this is the kind of pressure we should build on Pakistan if we are serious, because Pakistan will be against the wall and believe me, will have no answer to this strategy if India pursues it.
Well, if India pursues it, but at this point in time, what has been stated by the Water Resources Minister Gadkari in his tweet is a reiteration of the position that India has. But for this moment, Kapil Sibal and Sharad Sabharwal, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Well, in fact, I had spoken with the World Bank president after the Uri attacks in 2016 about the Indus Water Treaty, because remember, the World Bank mediated the treaty between India and Pakistan. Here's what the then World Bank chief had to say. Have you had any conversation with either the Indian government or the Pakistan government on the Indus Water Treaty?
You know, we have a very limited role in the Indus Water Treaty. It's more of an administrative role. So our great hope is that over time that we will find a solution to the current to the current discussions and the current disagreements that will work for both parties. It is in everybody's interest. Not only Pakistan and India, but it is in the world's interest that we move toward a resolution of whatever differences that exist right now. Again, we have a very, very limited role. We just do a few things that are just based on the contract, and we will do everything we can to have the two parties come together and find a solution that works for both.
I know this is a sensitive issue, so I will not push you any further, but what would your key concern be if there were to be either a unilateral redrawing of the treaty? Well,
we want to do everything we can to ensure that the two parties come to an agreement that they can both agree on.
Well, that's the former World Bank president. The World Bank is a mediator for the Indus Water Treaty between India and Pakistan on the possibility of unilateral suspension or abrogation of the treaty. Well, the Reserve Bank has released the minutes of the Monetary Policy Committee's latest meeting, where the panel delivered a repo rate cut of 25 basis points. The minutes paint a dovish picture and show that the committee's focus is clearly on spurring growth as inflation outlook remains benign. Latha joins us now with her analysis of the MPC meeting. Latha, dovish but also concerned about growth.
Well, in the first place, I will not summarize because this is the longest set of minutes I've seen. Everyone's writing minutes running into 2 pages. So I'll suffice it to tell you what the market has taken away. It is dovish, but the markets say that it is only as dovish as expected. The market was expecting one more cut, and that's all that the minutes seem to indicate. They're not indicating a series of cuts. They're just, yes, there is concern for growth, as you say, but just one more cut. First, the dovish part, naysayer was, of course, Viralacharya. He also is suggesting, the comment is pretty dovish, saying that there are enough reasons to worry about worry that inflation is falling, but maybe we have to wait one more policy to ensure that core inflation is not getting out of hand. So even he is rooting for a cut, but in April. So not all that hawkish. The reason why I would say that you're not expecting too much is the most dovish member, Dholakia, is also saying that he wants a 2 percentage point difference between the repo rate and the inflation rate, which means he is also expecting only one more cut. He also wants just 2 cuts, one already given and one more. And then Michael Patra actually sounding at one point that, yes, I'm going for a cut, but food inflation, if it jumps up, then we have to be prepared to even hike. So again, not all that dovish, but yes, rooting for a cut. The governor, like everybody else, is pointing to risks as well. You know, core inflation could go up and the fisc could be a problem. So just to summarize, all those who voted for a cut because food is consistently falling and growth is in trouble. The 2 guys who did not vote for a cut merely say that let us wait, probably core inflation could still rise and growth is not all that bad. Let's wait and see. Probably the reaction of November, December were only because of the credit market problems and the rise in crude prices in October. That's sum and substance of the MPC. Bond markets not expected to have a rally. Largely on expected lines is what bond dealers say.
All right, Lata, thanks very much for that summary of the Reserve Bank's MPC minutes. Staying with the RBI, after deciding to cut the benchmark interest rate earlier this month, the RBI is now focusing on transmission of the rate reduction. So RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das met with CEOs of public and private sector banks to discuss the challenges in transmitting of rate cuts. He's also believed to have sought their views on the ways to align the movement of repo and lending rates. RBI's proposal to link lending rates to an external benchmark also discussed at that meeting. Well, speaking of meetings, shareholders of cash-strapped Jet Airways in a huddle for an extraordinary general meeting today. The shareholders have discussed various proposals for the revival of the airline. The outcome, though, is still awaited. Ritu Singh, who's been tracking that, joins us now. Ritu, what were the key proposals on the agenda and how much longer before we hear from them?
Well, we're really waiting for that, Shereen. No word yet and how soon we could be hearing the final results of that voting. But yes, it was a crucial EGM because several of these proposals are required for the company to be able to implement any turnaround plan under the proposed bank-led provisional resolution plan. Now, on the agenda today were several key items. Number one was to seek shareholder note to increase share capital from 200 crore rupees to 2,200 crore rupees, which Jet Airways proposes to do by issuing fresh 50 crore equity shares and 150 crore preferential shares. Second, they also sought shareholder note to convert a part or entire debt of 8,200 crore rupees into equity now or even at any point in the future. Third, they also sought shareholder approval to modify the Articles of Association, which is to allow lenders to nominate members on the board of Jet Airways, which is also, by the way, part of that provisional resolution plan that is being discussed between the lenders and the promoters. And lastly, they also sought to empower the board to be able to negotiate with lenders the terms of reference of any future loans that the company is going to take. So these were the key items. The approval of shareholders is very important, as I said, for the bank-led resolution plan to really work, which envisages a funding gap of 8,500 crore rupees. And if additional money is to be raised and any deal has to be done, the nod for shareholders will be very important.
All right, we are still waiting to hear from the Jet Airways management on the decisions taken and ratified at the EGM. Thanks very much, Ritu, for joining us. Staying with aviation, India's largest airline, Indigo, has been hit with multiple flight cancellations over the last few weeks. Over 50 pilots have resigned recently. Bad weather coupled with runway shutdowns in Mumbai and Bengaluru have added to the airline's woes. All of this at a time when the airline has expanded its fleet rapidly. Anu Sharma is here to explain how outgoing pilots and incoming aircraft are proving to be a tough challenge for Indigo to handle. Anu.
You've got to hire pilots many months in advance. You need that bench because you do not want to get caught where you have capacity and do not have pilots and crew to operate. Aditya Ghosh, the then president of Indigo, had said in January 2016. 3 years later, the airline's recruitment and employee retention policy looks weak and short-sighted. Dozens of cancellations every day, a high cancellation rate of 2.4% in January, and one of its poorest on-time performance of 64%. Sources tell us that over 50 commanders or senior pilots have resigned recently, and bad weather, runway closure further made matters worse for the airline. Now, did Indigo not plan recruitment in sync with capacity? Data would say so. From FY16 till now, while fleet is up by 95%, pilot count is up by just 77%. Last year, the airline added one plane every week. But shortage of commanders led to exhaustive rosters for pilots, keeping them away from home base for up to 4 days. No work-life balance and also an absence of pilot union only makes matters worse. Now, the first officers are available, but they will take 4 to 5 years to be captains. Hence, the near-term option is to get expats, which the airline had planned last year in July. Still, only 20 expats have been inducted so far, and 100 will join by June. But even if that happens, that will mean more cost for the low-cost airline as expats come at higher salary, typically around 10 lakh rupees, more perks and high incentives. In addition to being a dampener for the Indian pilots, the measure will just prove to be another headwind for Indigo as it already struggles to increase its bottom line in the wake of neo issues and low yields. More importantly, the lack of quality and quantity of domestic training organizations may further aggravate problems for the market leader going forward. Back to you.
Anu, thanks very much for joining us with that analysis. But the other big headline this evening, the board of the Employees Provident Fund Organisation, the EPFO, has recommended hiking the interest rate to 8.65% for the current financial year, subject to government nod. Now, if approved, it will be the first hike since FY16. Yash has the details. Yash.
Well, Shereen, of course, a development which should be read positively by over 6 crore EPFO subscribers. Essentially, the retirement body has recommended a hike in the interest rate to 8.65% for financial year 19. Also, of course, as you rightly mentioned, this hike will be subject to the Finance Ministry approval before it gets credited into those 6 crore EPF accounts. Now, as far as the hike is concerned, as compared to FY15, it's just a hike of 10 basis points. But why this number of 8.65 is important, I'll tell you. Essentially, as you rightly said, it's the first hike after FY16. And since FY13, EPFO has been slashing its interest rate, all those years after then, starting from 8.8% in FY13, coming down to 8.55% in FY18, and now a hike of 10 basis points really makes a big difference when it comes to the money which all these subscribers get. Of course, this was one very crucial proposal which got approved, but other things on the agenda. The first one was that certain EPFO members had raised objection when it comes to the EPFO's investment pattern, particularly with respect to the investments which are made in government's divestment program, be it in the form of CPSE ETF or Bharat 22 ETF. Essentially, the whole reservation was that returns which have been derived out of these government programs have been very weak. To be particular, just to share some numbers, 1.9% return as far as CPSE ETF is concerned, and just 0.5% return when it comes to Bharat 22 ETF. So the proposal was that EPFO should cut down on its investments where it's not getting the right returns. Of course, on this particular proposal, Labour Ministry has said that they will have a word with the Finance Ministry in terms of how this can be done away with. The last proposal was to hike the minimum pension amount as far as 4 crore EPS or the Employee Pension Scheme subscribers are concerned. Here also the current pension which is paid is 1,000 rupees per month. The proposal is to hike it to 3,000 rupees per month. But of course, the Labour Minister also telling CNBC TV 18 that there will be more meetings which will be done on this particular issue. There will be conversations with the Finance Ministry before any final call is taken as far as increasing that minimum pension is concerned.
All right, Yash, many thanks for joining us with the decisions that were taken by the EPFO today have to be ratified by the government. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear review petitions on its December 14th verdict on the Rafael deal. The verdict gave a clean chit to the government over the controversial fighter jet deal, and the petition alleges that the apex court was misled by the government. Ashmit joins us now with more. Ashmit, so the court willing to take up this matter, but not today.
Right, so the Rafale judgment of the Apex Court has already seen a fair bit of criticism. In fact, 2 review petitions have been filed, and there are 2 collection applications filed by the government itself. Now we understand there is a 5th application that has been filed. The original petitioners, that's Prashant Bhushan, Arun Shourie as well as Yashwant Sinha, have filed a perjury application seeking action against government officials. The allegation is that false, misleading information was submitted before the Apex Court, and that requires the court's action, that this is almost tantamount to contempt. So strong words there being used. This petition essentially cites the CAG report which recently came out, as well as various media reports. Now, the allegation, the charge essentially is, the petition essentially makes that it was falsely, the court was falsely led to believe that the CAG at the time of issuance of the judgment was privy to the pricing details, which was clearly not the case, and that this again is a case of misleading the Apex Court. Second, the petition argues that even as the negotiation team was negotiating with the government of France, it wasn't disclosed to the Apex Court that parallel to the negotiation negotiation team in violation of the DPP. The PMO, the Prime Minister's office, was also in negotiations, was also consulting the French side. And this is again the second allegation that has been made. The third allegation is that it was again not revealed to the apex court that members of the negotiation team itself had in fact expressed their dissent against the non-issuance, against the waiver of sovereign guarantees as well as waiver of the escrow account. And this again was not made known to the apex court. Concerns cited, and as of today, this case was mentioned before the Chief Justice, Justice Gogoi. As of right now, Justice Gogoi, the Supreme Court, has assured that they look into the matter, that they will introspect, and that they will deal with the issue. So again, the apex court looking to oblige as of right now. Will of course get more clarity as the case progresses.
In over 3-decade-long career, Anil Swaroop has straddled many roles. In his book, Not Just a Civil Servant, he's done some plain speaking about many issues he's seen at close quarters. Are bureaucrats resorting to speaking first and planning later? Has the Uday scheme lived up to the potential it promised? I spoke about these issues with the former bureaucrat a short while ago and started by asking him about the on-ground impact of the CAG report on coal. He believes that it had a devastating impact on decision-making. Listen in.
I became coal secretary after the so-called coal scam. Yeah. And there were officers who refused to commit themselves on the file, and rightly so, because they were apprehensive that once they commit on the file, at some point in time, they will be called to question. So what I say in my book is, yes, there were a number of wrongs that were done in terms of coal block allocation during the previous government. But the manner in which it was presented, the calculations that were done, the grandstanding that was done, created an environment where officers started thinking twice before committing themselves on the file. So you have officers like Mr. Harish Gupta, Krofa, all these officers have absolutely spotless reputation, and they are in serious trouble because of the grandstanding. It's not, he wrongs.
So was it politicized?
It was ultimately, once the report came, then it became political. I would not say it was political before the report. The report gave the fodder for it to become political. That's why I say, see, I have no control over politicians, but I have control over myself. As a civil servant, it is my job to do my job, nothing beyond it. Grandstanding actually reflects doing something beyond my job. I distinctly remember the Deputy CAG flashing that report in a press conference. That is unbecoming of a civil servant. Our job is to present a report. Report goes to the parliament. If there is a press conference, answer them. Don't grandstand. Don't go and announce that there is a scam. If there is a scam, let it be discovered. My contention is that if there is a wrong, nail that wrong. There was a wrong, nail that. But don't come up with generic figures like there is a notional loss of so many crores. And what is the calculation? You look at an average cost of mining. The mining varies from 400 rupees to 4,000 rupees. Yeah. How can you average it at 590? Look at the comparisons that are made. So someone probably didn't have the time or didn't want to go into the details of it and came up with conclusions with devastating consequences of governance apart from anything else.
What has been the most devastating consequence of the CAG report on coal that the country is faced with today, to your mind? Decision
making impacted. There are certain files when we did the coal block auction, I had to commit. I was the first person to commit on the file as secretary. That normally doesn't happen. The file comes from joint secretary or director where they come up with this recommendation that this should be done. There was, in number of files, there was no recommendation on the file. I examined it and committed for the first time. I did it. This was because they were not prepared to commit themselves on the file. See, the problem is, now I'm glad that the current government has changed the law. Earlier, the law was 13(1)(d) of the Prevention of Corruption Act. Yeah. You know, you could be held liable irrespective of the fact whether there was any malified or not. And it was crazy. And civil servants are being hounded for that. So you come up with an environment where people feel all wrong has been done without going into the details of it, and everyone gets sucked into it, and thereafter decision-making gets impacted. That's what happened.
You know, one, of course, the devastating impact to your mind, of what happened with the CAG report on coal, and you believe that the economy is still facing the brunt of that and the consequences of that. But this grandstanding that you spoke of, in fact, the chapter in your book is called Yearning to be Famous. How much of this is a problem that you see today in the bureaucracy?
You know, I have somehow come to see that some of us, not all, some of us have started road showing things. There is no harm in going for a road show. My contention is, first the groundwork needs to be done. You can't become a event management chief, managing one event, then the other event, without looking into the ground reality, what's going on. And that's where some of the problems emerge. People question it subsequently because ultimately your success or failure will be determined by what you actually do on the ground, not what you're talking about. So I have always believed you talk, but after the walk. You don't start talking without walking or start talking before walking. I mean, in a number of cases, I find civil servants, after having done some solid work, they talk to the media and tell them what good work has been done. That needs to be done. But you can't be announcing like a politician. You can't be making announcements without doing your groundwork. My personal view is civil servants should first walk and then talk. They have to talk. I'm not against their talking, but not so much talking as they do.
What is your apprehension about the manner in which the Uday program was taken forward and how it's going to finally end up?
I'm a bit surprised that we had a model in the country which worked so beautifully, the Gujarat model in the power sector. You know, Uday scheme is based on what happened in Gujarat. And the hope was that this model would be replicated elsewhere. I'm not very sure whether the scheme was implemented with the intensity which it ought to. It ultimately got reduced to only financial management. That is, transferring the debt of the discount to the state governments. Beyond it, feeder separation, AT&T losses.
So the actual reform hasn't happened?
It has happened, but not to the level it should. I mean, the data I was looking at, around 13 discoms are doing worse than what they were doing before Uday came into being. So there is something wrong somewhere. Now, had it just been a theoretical model, one could have understood that it was difficult to implement. You had a working model, and I had even suggested as coal secretary, because coal was also getting impacted because of that. I had suggested, why can't states like Gujarat and Rajasthan be clubbed in the sense of bureaucracies of two states sitting together in a room, coming out a workable action plan on the lines of what happened in Gujarat. Chhattisgarh is doing very well. I suggested, why can't Chhattisgarh and MP sit together? Old state. They could sit together and find out what is happening in Chhattisgarh. So it's not from Timbuktu or West that we are looking at. We had successful models in the country. I think the intensity was missing. I think most of it was happening in Delhi, unlike it should have happened in the states. I say that because in coal, in 2 years as coal secretary, I didn't convene a single meeting of the state governments in Delhi. We traveled to the states, sat with the state government, sat with the officials there, worked out a detailed action plan in conjunction with their understanding of what we were doing, and it worked. It does work, because you have to sit with the state governments, not in Delhi. See, in Delhi, even secretary will never have time to spend the entire day. If I go to a state, I have nothing else to do but for sitting with the state government officials and working out a plan. I'm not very sure this happened in the Uday scheme. Uday was a fantastic idea. Uday, so to say, had worked in Gujarat.
Now, it's day 2 of the Indian IT industry body NASSCOM's Technology and Leadership Forum 2019. And on day 2, I caught up with some of the top leaders of Tech India to discuss the outlook for the sector, what lies ahead, and how skilling is critical for the industry to be resilient against any turmoil. Here's an excerpt of that special interaction. You've changed the entire format today with respect to guidance. Now, you're also considering a whole host of technology companies which go beyond just IT services and IT exports. Would bringing back guidance make sense to you later, or is it just this year?
No, we've done with guidance. We are done with guidance because guidance was done in the past for a certain reason. And the methodology we had used had worked at that point in time. This industry has transformed tremendously. And one of the reasons we've had such a fabulous year is because this industry is transforming, and because it's the digital at scale that we talk about is actually becoming a reality. So we have to now look at the industry in a very different way. So the guidance is gone. What we are looking at is trying to understand what the leaders out there are thinking about. What are the sentiments? What sentiments do they have with respect to economic growth, with respect to business growth, and a host of other things. So the CEO survey is a much better way of understanding the outlook. And end of year, we'll absolutely come back and look at how the industry has performed.
Okay, one of the people who performed well is with us. Rasam, it's been an interesting year. As we got into the last 3 months of 2018, there was a lot of talk about the possibility of a slowdown around the corner by 2020 or by the end of 2019. A couple of market watchers have hinted at a recession even. Are your clients preparing for it? We've spoken about uncertainties, but are your clients also preparing for the eventuality of a recession? And are you thereby prepared for that possibility?
I think our clients are telling us that they are preparing for a range of scenarios. Like what you heard in the whole excitement of NTLF over the last 2 days, is that technology is empowering businesses to do so many things that they never thought was possible in the past. Every single speaker is telling you, from the enterprise world, is telling you that technology is part of the core business strategy for all their enterprises right now. Every enterprise wants to become a technology company in some form or fashion there. So I think the tech industry will do well, but growth rates will maybe X this year, Y next year, etc., etc. But I think the future for our industry is incredibly bright, both for service providers like us, but more importantly for talent that wants to come into this industry. They have the obligation, no doubt, to stay relevant on a skills perspective, but those who are willing to make that investment in themselves, I think it's a great industry to be in.
Are Indian IT players now better prepared and more widespread across the board to handle uncertainties now than they were in 2016 to 2018 period?
Yeah, so first I'll start by giving you a sense of how my clients are interacting with us in terms of this this big concern about recession, right? I actually think that CEOs on the client side are much more focused on the disruption out there in the marketplace. Who is their new competition? Are they investing enough in technology? Are they being relevant to the appropriate set of customers? Things like that, as opposed to really focusing on what will happen, which is out of their control, right? And in fact, I would say that that is actually creating lots of new opportunities for all of us, and particularly in the BPM sector.
All right, from one important event to another that has been in focus for the last 24 hours. It was the second day of Aero India 2019, the 5-day event that's currently underway in Bengaluru. And on day 2, also, the event was attended by the who's who of the global aircraft manufacturing industry. Jude Sannett filed this report on their plans for the country. Take a look.
Ever since the Rafale controversy broke out, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited has found itself in the spotlight of the controversy itself, given the fact that its manufacturing capabilities have been brought to question. However, at day 2 of Aero India, 2 top avionics and an aircraft major, Thales and Boeing, have clearly reposed their faith in the PSU.
This is an additional contract that we're signing with HAL. As I told you, we have a very long-standing relationship with them, and we have many activities together with them. The needs in terms of rocket launchers is huge. This is a technology, a solution that is really needed. It's very efficient, very precise, very accurate, and then it's according to the end customer plan.
We're already working with HAL. They've been a long-term supplier for the Boeing company. When you really survey the capabilities at a aircraft level, who has really already done manufacturing, done making, done systems level integration, has the depth of capability and proven talent, it's HAL.
But as was the case with day 1 of Aero India, day 2 as well saw a whole lot of focus on Make in India. Manufacturing majors much like Russian helicopters and BAE Systems outlined plans along with Indian defense partners to manufacture more within India.
It's of great demand here, both militarily and in civilian sphere. It's a brand new helicopter using a lot of latest technologies. It uses very good state-of-the-art engine, a lot of new materials. It is light, it is strong, and it is versatile.
We have already supplied 5 guns. As you probably are aware, 2 of them had participated in the Republic Day parade also, and a couple of them have fired in Pokhran to carry out the firing and the data collection for the range tables. Apart from these 5 guns, we are going to be giving a complement of 18 odd more by the end of this year as per the contractual deliverables. So everything is going fine, and hopefully by the end of the year we should have the first operationally ready M777 Indian regiment on the Indian soil.
While the best of military might was on display, commercial carriers also outlined their sales strategies. In fact, in a CNBC TV 18 exclusive, Boeing explained just why it expects to do so well in 2019.
We have already sold over 225 Maxes to Jet Airways, about 155 Maxes to SpiceJet with additional options, and then recently 6 787 Dreamliners to Vistara with 4 purchase rights. What that means is we have a lot of order book, and we are kind of booked solid for the next 4 or 5 years, and many of these airplanes were going to come this year. I think we will expect to deliver about 20 to 25 Maxes. Next year, this time, we will have the first Vistara airplane come in.
So ambitious plans, no doubt, but there's one concern that continues to remain for all manufacturers, that the Indian government continues to fast-track procurement plans so as to ensure easier manufacturing. Reporting from the Yelahanka Air Force Base in Bengaluru, this is Jude Sanat.
All right, on to an exclusive interview. In a world where many global brands are taking up social causes to tell their brand stories, Procter & Gamble's Global Chief Brand Officer, Mark Pitchard, in his exclusive interview with CNBC TV 18 Shibani Garat, speaks about how brands can be a force for good. He also spoke about the recent Gillette commercial that generated a lot of heat for calling on men to counter toxic masculinity, and explains how P&G, that is Procter & Gamble, dealt with the backlash. Here are the excerpts from that interview.
What's really changed is the consumers we serve. 9 out of 10 people feel better about a brand if it promotes a positive promotion of a social or environmental cause. Half of people are making decisions on brands they buy on the basis of whether it shares their values. So that's a big part of it. The other piece of it is that business can be one of the greatest forces for good and a force for growth than any other organization in the world. So what we're doing is choosing to use our voice as a force for good and a force for growth.
You know what, sticking to social issues, some topics that you take really work for brands. For example, Like a Girl really worked well, everyone received it well, all the consumers really liked it. But something like Gillette didn't really go well with many sections of the audience. So what is your comment on that? How do you deal with that? How do you deal with the backlash?
Stay tuned. Always Like a Girl, and Whisper Like a Girl, exactly right. 19% of people thought Like a Girl was a positive phrase before. 3 years later, 76% of people think it's a positive phrase. Gillette. Gillette has had 110 million views in a little bit over than a month. What I would say is it's really important to discern between the actual consumer sentiment and some of the overheated social media rhetoric that has been reported. We have a lot of evidence that this is a very positive message, and that there's been 3 separate studies that talk about how positive it is. We were getting thousands of positive affirmations for what we're doing. We've got schools that are educating people on it, companies and celebrities that are coming to talk with us about it. So I would stay tuned on this one, because the social media rhetoric comes from a very small group of people. I strongly disagree with some who say that that was an attack on masculinity. Actually, on the contrary, just watch the whole film. It rejects bad behavior and it promotes good behavior. That's a good message, and it's a conversation.
According to World Health Organization, immunization currently prevents between 2 to 3 million deaths every year. Yet 5 lakh children die due to vaccine-preventable diseases every year in our country. Serum Institute of India, in partnership with Network 18, launched Swasth Immunized India, a nationwide vaccination and immunization campaign to raise awareness on the need to immunize our children. Kareena Kapoor Khan has extended her support as campaign ambassador and has formally launched the campaign today in Mumbai.
60% of children in India are vaccinated. About 40% don't receive or can't receive vaccinations due to many factors, cold chain restrictions, awareness, fake news also on social media that you hear about. Vaccinations are safe and perhaps the most cost-effective way to prevent morbidity and mortality in children under the age of 5.
It grabs more attention to say something, oh my God, do you know what happened? Or you're trying to create drama about something. But the facts have proven that vaccines have not caused autism, have not hurt children, that do prevent life-threatening diseases. So to me, I don't understand why a mother would cross-question it.
I think as a parent, as a mother today, I think nothing is more important. I think हर माँ अपने सिर्फ अपने बच्चे की safety, अपने बच्चे की health के बारे में पहले सोचती है. And I think today we're going to be talking about that. Today we're going to be encouraging people to come out there, immunize their child, make sure that your child is safe. Make sure that your child is being able to battle themselves from infections and fatal diseases. एक polio campaign हुआ था, I think with Amit ji, and it was a huge success. We are starting today and we are hoping that this is also going to follow its footsteps and take its due course.
And with that, it's time to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour Plus. From all of us here, good night and thank you so much for watching.